Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at chi-square today. I know chi-square has been there, we have heard of it, but then we're just going to look at the basics. So, as a beginner, what is a chi-square? How do we calculate chi-square? And in this tutorial, we're just going to look at the very basics. For example, let's say you are in Excel and you want to perform a chi-square test in Excel. Obviously, in the classroom, we are used to the formulas and calculations manually. We will try to see how we can do that, but then instead of using a calculator, we are just going to use Excel to perform the tasks that we would have done using the manual procedure. Now, I have listed here a number of chi-square formulas that are in Excel and are useful in different ways. For example, the first one, chi-square, then you have dot distribution, dist for short, dist. So this particular formula calculates the left tail probabilities of any chi-square distribution when you feed it the values that you want to perform the chi-square on. So x represents those values, and you have the g underscore freedom, so that is simply a degree of freedom. Then whether you want a cumulative, the last parameter there, this one here, the last parameter in the formula, the syntax, it's actually talking about whether you want a cumulative or not a cumulative. Okay, so we would just explain all these things in another video. This video is going to be based on one particular way of calculating the chi-square. For example, for students in a classroom, if you want to use it to do your assignment. But we'll go into each of these in later videos to describe how they are actually performed and why cumulative, why uh, not cumulative, that kind of thing. Now, the second chi-square formula here, you see, is almost the same, but then you have an RT at the end there. So this indicates the right tail. So whilst the first one indicates the left tail, the one with the RT, simply tells you it is a right tail distribution. However, the difference here is that this one doesn't have the cumulative option. It is just the values x, observed values, and your degree of freedom. Now we go to the one with the inverse, INV. That is the one with the inverse. So it calculates the inverse of the left tail probability of chi-square distribution. You remember when you perform an analysis using a particular software, say Stata, Arrow, or those ones, SPSS, you realize you always have a p value attached to it. So this particular one, it's the one that will calculate the p value for you if you were to do a manual calculation of chi-square in Excel. So the syntax is you provide, just type this, the chi-square SQ for short, dot inverse INV, then you provide the probability, that is the margin of error. Usually we use 0.05 or 5%, that is 5% margin of error, but then it depends on the settings that you are or the kind of confidence that you want for your results, and you still have your degree of freedom in the same formula. Now the RT again on this one is the right tail. So whilst the one without an RT is the left tail, the one with the RT is the right tail. So by now you would have gotten the hint of the different four formulas that I have just spoken about in the right now. Now, when we go to the last one is actually doing a test, whereas the one given as the inverse, the two inverses, it's simply asking you to provide the probabilities. This particular one it's also going to give you a p-value, but then it is asking you to feed in the observed values and the expected values. The observed values is what is given to you, and you will have to calculate the expected values. Now, the way you calculate the expected values depends on the kind of chi-square that you're going to do. And again, we're going to go into these in different videos in detail so we can understand how they are done perfectly. Now, what is it at all? You might be asking. Yes, it is a statistical test, a tool that we use to compare observed values and expected values, just like in any other test that we have known before, like a t-test and ANOVA analysis of variance, regression analysis. So this is also a statistical technique that we use to compare observed and expected values. Now we use this when the variables that we are interested in, they are both categories. Categories in the sense that if we have gender, we have male, female. So male, female, they are groups. They are not something that you use a ruler to measure, or use a weighing scale to measure, or you simply have to use a particular instrument to measure. They are categories. Either you are an A or you are a B. So something like that. Now, the purpose for which we're doing all these things is simply to determine whether or not the two categorical variables are associated, whether there is a relationship between the two of them. So that is the reason why we are using the chi-square test in the case of categorical variables to test their associations. Now, how we do this depends on you, the individual. You can decide to go manual, like in the classroom setting, use the values are given to you and you calculate your expected values, get your total chi-square, and then you compare with the table value, or you calculate the p-value and do the comparison with your preferred p-value. That is one way of doing it. Or you can also employ the services of a software, because a lot of the softwares you have chi-square test built into them, just like the Excel formulas we have described before. You could use Excel to do the easiest way, just to get your p-value and start talking, or you can use it like a student in the classroom. If you're given an assignment and you want to use Excel to perform your analysis or your results, you just use Excel and then go ahead, write the formulas the way they are, construct the tables the way you want them to be, like you would have written on paper, and then you do your calculations in that manner. So, on this note, let's dive in to see how we can use Excel to do some of the things. So, maybe I'll be using manual, maybe I'll be using any of the formulas, but then in this video, they are not going to be comprehensive. It's just an introduction to show you how you could you could use Excel to actually perform a chi-square test. So we're in Excel now. Let's say this is the data set that we have. Let me zoom in a little. Okay, so this is the data that we have, and the purpose is to look at gender and then roles that they occupy. Okay, so the idea is the performance of the company, the firm, does it depend on whether the position occupied is a male or a female, that kind of thing. So we're looking at association between gender and the position occupied by the person in the organization or the company. Now, as I indicated before, this we could have done it in several ways. Okay, but I'm going to use the manual approach, where we will have to calculate our expected values and then come out with our total chi-square value, before we go on to do our comparison. So I am doing it as if this was an assignment for me to do and present in a classroom setting without having to struggle and be using calculators, punching and putting formulas. So the first thing I would need to do is to actually get my row and my column totals in place. So under female, I'm going to type total there and then get my total here. Then the where you have the auxiliary stuff, the next column, I'm going to type another total there. So why am I doing this? I want to add them up vertically and then horizontally. So let's say for managers, how many are they? We use Excel formulas. Now, this could be a standalone video to teach you a lot of things. So I am assuming that you are a first time user in Excel, and then some of the things you might be wondering, why do you have to do A? Why do you have to do B? So I will just mention them in passing as I go on. So to type a formula in Excel or to get a formula to do a calculations for you, you first need to type the equal sign before any other thing. So whenever you type an equal sign, Excel expects what follows to be a formula. Okay, for a reference, you want to make reference to another cell or a group of cells. So before you type a formula, make sure you have an equal sign typed before. Now we want to sum them, and as the name goes, we want to type sum. So in Excel, most of the formulas are straightforward and they are self-explanatory. Sum, what does it mean? We just want to sum a set of numbers. What are the numbers that we want to sum up? Now, this is where a lot of us get things wrong because we actually type in the actual numbers that we want to sum instead of making the references. The danger is that if I make a change, whatever I typed before will remain the same. But then we want to make references to the to the cells, such that if any of the values changes, we have the calculate. We have the total or whatever value that we have calculated. We want that to change dynamically according to the values in the respective cells that we have changed. So because of that, I'm not going to type 453 as you can see in this formula number one. So I could have just typed 453, comma, then I come to type 345, close the bracket, press enter and get my answer. But if I do that, I am going to get into a problem if I decide to change this number here to a different number. So let's make references and just select them. And you can see that it is actually referring to the cell names instead of the actual value. So we can close the bracket, press enter, and we get this answer here. Now, there is another way of getting the totals, all of them at once. Okay, so let me go step by step. So first, I'm going to, you see this dot at the bottom right. If you move your mouse pointer, that's a nice plus sign. If you move it there, the plus sign changes to something that is dark and deeper without, the outer line. So when you see this, you simply right click your left button and you move across. You can see that I am moving across and it is summing alongside. So it's going to carry the formula and not the values along. So I can now leave it and I have this total following. So I do the same thing here. Now there are, in a case where you want to do the sum and you are not sure of the formulas, another way to do the same equals to sum is to say that, okay, let me just select those I want to add up. So I start, let's say we want to add a male row. I start from the first value here and select all of them, including the cell where I want the totals to go into. Then I can move up to the top here. You can see right here from the home ribbon. If I click on the home ribbon, that is selected by default though. If I click on the home ribbon, then I come to the very right, I see editing, and you can see something like sigma. So this sigma, as we know in mathematics, represents addition. So I will just simply click on that symbol there, and the total is given. Now let's click inside that cell, and you can see from here at the top that it is as the same formula that we typed before. Okay, you can see it right here. Equals to sum, then it gives me the range of cells where which I want to find the sum. All right. So I could do the same thing to this, or I just hold that button here and then pull it along. Then you can see that we have the totals all summed up. Now this video is getting too long, and so I'm going to stop here and then do another one. And in that one, we are going to calculate the expected values before we do the chi-square completely. So I'll see you in that video.